Imagine for a moment that there are ancient texts so dangerous and disturbing that they were deliberately hidden, erased from the scriptures, and banned by the church. Books that describe unsettling realities, tell forbidden stories, and contain knowledge that could completely change our perception of good, evil, and the very purpose of humanity. These texts weren't simply ignored or left aside, but were actively pursued, condemned as heresy, and erased from official history. Many of them contain descriptions of fallen beings, revelations about the origins of angels and demons, and warnings about invisible forces that have influenced humanity since time immemorial. But who decided that these books should be banned? What exactly did they contain? What made them considered dangerous? It could be that the truth they hide is too unsettling to be revealed. Today, we are going to dive into these forgotten books, into these forbidden pages that might hold answers that have been denied to humanity for centuries. We will unveil their darkest and most disturbing secrets, explore what made them so feared by the religious authorities, and discover why, even today, they are still considered dangerous. And the most shocking of all, the last of these books is the most terrifying of all. Its content is so disturbing that it could change the way you see history, faith, and even the fate of humanity. But before we get to that, we first need to understand how and why these texts were eliminated. When we talk about the Bible, many people believe it has always been a single, complete, and unaltered book. However, the reality is very different. During the early centuries of Christianity, there were numerous texts that told stories, visions, and teachings that were not included in the final version of the scriptures. As the church consolidated its power, decisions were made about which books would be part of the Bible and which would be excluded. Some were rejected because they did not align with the official doctrine, others because they presented ideas that were too controversial, and some because they revealed knowledge that the religious authorities preferred to keep secret. One of the most frightening and enigmatic texts that was removed from the Bible is the Book of Enoch. This ancient manuscript, attributed to Enoch, the great-grandfather of Noah, describes a completely different reality from what we know. Its pages narrate the story of the Watchers, a group of angels who descended to earth and took human women as their wives, giving rise to a hybrid race known as the Nephilim. These giant beings possessed inhuman strength and wisdom, and according to the account, they were responsible for corrupting humanity by teaching forbidden knowledge. Thanks to them, humans learned writing, magic, astrology, and the art of war. But what seemed like progress was, in fact, their doom, as this knowledge led humanity to chaos and destruction. God, enraged by this celestial rebellion, sent archangels Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael to punish the Watchers and exterminate the Nephilim. According to the text, these entities were captured and chained in a dark dimension, while humanity was purified through the Great Flood. The most unsettling aspect of the Book of Enoch is its description of what happens after death. Enoch claims to have been taken to the heavens and witnessed with his own eyes how souls are judged and sent to different dimensions. He speaks of a hell that is unlike what we know, a place where the condemned not only suffer eternal torments, but where entities also exist that control and manipulate the fate of souls. This book was widely respected in ancient times, and in fact, some passages of the Bible reference it. However, over time, it was removed from the scriptures and declared apocryphal. Only in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has it been preserved as part of the Bible, while in the rest of the world, it was virtually eradicated. But here arises the most important question. Why was this book banned? Some historians believe its exclusion was due to the fact that it presented a version of history that conflicted with the official doctrine of the church. Enoch describes a world in which angels interact directly with humanity, reveals secrets, and challenge the divine order, something that could have been deemed too dangerous for the stability of the faith. Others believe that the true reason for its censorship is that it revealed truths that were too shocking about the nature of the universe and the role that spiritual entities play in our existence. What is undeniable is that this is not the only forbidden text that describes hidden knowledge. There are other books that were considered even more dangerous, and that contain even more disturbing revelation. And what we are about to discover in the following texts could completely change our view of reality. If the book of Enoch was removed from the Bible for its revelations about fallen angels and the fate of souls, the next forbidden text is even more terrifying. This is the Gospel of Judas, a manuscript that completely challenges our understanding of Judas Iscariot's betrayal and the true nature of Jesus. For centuries, Judas has been seen as the ultimate traitor, the disciple who sold his master for a few silver coins and handed him over to his enemies. However, this forbidden gospel presents us with a completely different story, one that could radically alter the traditional view of Christianity. This text, discovered in Egypt in the 1970s, but hidden from the public for decades, asserts that Judas was not a traitor, but rather Jesus' most loyal disciple. According to the manuscript, Jesus entrusted him with a secret that he did not reveal to the other apostles, that his mission on earth could only be fulfilled if Judas delivered him. The Gospel of Judas describes a private conversation between the two, in which Jesus asks him to betray him so that his spirit can be freed from his mortal body and return to his true divine nature. In other words, Judas did not betray Jesus out of greed, but because he obeyed his will and fulfilled an essential role in the divine plan. But what is most unsettling about this text is not just the reinterpretation of Judas as a hero, but what it reveals about the true origin of Jesus. According to this gospel, the material world was created by a lesser God, an imperfect entity known as the demiurge, and not by the supreme God. This idea comes from the ancient current of Gnosticism, a school of thought that held that the visible universe is a prison and that true spiritual beings must awaken and free themselves from their earthly existence. In this version, Jesus did not come to save humanity through suffering on the cross, but to deliver hidden knowledge that would allow souls to escape the influence of the demiurge. This vision was so radical and dangerous for the early church that the Gospel of Judas was declared heretical and condemned to oblivion. For centuries, it was thought to be lost until a copy was discovered in an Egyptian desert, written in Coptic on deteriorated papyrus. Why was this gospel censored so fiercely? The answer is simple. Its content threatened the official doctrine. If Judas was not a traitor but a chosen one, the entire narrative of Christianity would be altered. If Jesus did not come to redeem original sin, but to teach forbidden knowledge, the church would lose its authority over salvation. But if this book was already disturbing enough, what we find next is even more unsettling. One of the darkest and most mysterious texts ever banned from the Bible is the Apocalypse of Peter, a terrifying vision of the fate of condemned souls. This book, attributed to the Apostle Peter, describes in extreme detail the punishments that sinners suffer after death. Unlike the Apocalypse of John, which was included in the Bible and focuses on the final battle between good and evil, the Apocalypse of Peter shows us a descent into the deepest abysses of hell. Its pages clearly detail the torments awaiting liars, murderers, thieves, and other condemned souls. Demons are described torturing souls, specific punishments for each sin, and suffering that seems never-ending. But the most shocking aspect of this book is that, in the end, it presents a revelation that contradicts the entire traditional idea of eternal punishment. Peter sees that, after a long period of torment, souls begin to be forgiven and released from hell. In other words, according to this banned text, punishment is not eternal, and divine mercy even reaches the condemned. This idea was considered dangerous because it challenges the teaching of eternal punishment, which the church used for centuries to control the faithful. If even the worst sinners can be forgiven, then the fear of hell would lose its power as a tool of control. For this reason, the Apocalypse of Peter was removed from the Bible and declared apocryphal, although some fragments of its content have survived in ancient manuscripts hidden in monasteries and caves in the desert. However, the most terrifying aspect of these texts is that they all seem to point to the same conclusion. The story we have been told about good, evil, and humanity's fate may be very different from reality. But if you think this is shocking, wait until you learn about the last forbidden book, the most unsettling of all, one that could completely change our understanding of existence. Let me know if you want me to continue with the third part. Throughout history, the church has decided which texts are sacred and which should be hidden. But among all the forbidden books, there is one that stands out for its darkness and the fear it invoked in those who read it. It is the Book of Giants, an apocryphal text linked to the Book of Enoch. This ancient manuscript, found among the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran, speaks of the Nephilim in chilling detail. According to the account, these hybrids, the offspring of the Watchers and human women, were not only enormous in size, but were also ruthless and violent. The text describes how the Nephilim devastated the earth, unleashing chaos and destruction. They were powerful, insatiable creatures that dominated humans with cruelty. But the most terrifying part is that, before their extermination in the flood, these giants began to have visions of their imminent fate. The Book of Giants details how these creatures started experiencing prophetic dreams in which they saw their downfall. Some of them tried to warn the Watchers, their heavenly fathers, desperately seeking a way to escape their doom. However, it was already too late. The visions described their annihilation, the arrival of a cataclysm that would erase them from the face of the earth, and the wrath of God descending upon them. In their despair, the giants attempted to communicate with Enoch, believing that he could intercede for them before God. But Enoch already knew what their fate would be. Their punishment was sealed, their existence was an abomination, and there would be no salvation for them. This text was completely erased from the biblical canon because it reinforces the idea that there was a time when the earth was governed by entities that were neither completely human nor completely divine. If this were true, it would mean that the history we know is just a fraction of the truth, and that there was a war in the heavens, the consequences of which still affect humanity. But if you think this story is disturbing, what we're about to reveal in the last forbidden book is even more shocking. A text that not only challenges our conception of good and evil, but whose very existence raises a terrifying question. What if God is not who we think he is? There exists a forbidden gospel that calls into question the true nature of the Creator, a text that was deemed heretical and removed from official history, yet offers us a completely different perspective on what divinity means. This is the Gospel of Thomas, a book that does not recount the life of Jesus or his crucifixion, but compiles his most esoteric teachings. Unlike the traditional Gospels, here Jesus does not appear as a savior who comes to redeem the sins of the world, but as a teacher who reveals hidden knowledge, reserved only for those prepared to receive it. This gospel holds that the kingdom of God is not a physical place, nor a reward after death, but a state of consciousness that human beings can achieve in this life. According to the words attributed to Jesus in this text, true salvation is not found in blind belief, but in awakening to the truth that has been hidden from humanity. One of the most unsettling phrases in this gospel states, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you." These words suggest that knowledge, true knowledge, is not found in temples or sacred books, but within each individual. However, if someone ignores that inner knowledge, they will end up being consumed by ignorance and illusion. The Gospel of Thomas was prohibited because it removes the need for a religious institution to attain the truth. It does not speak of sin, punishment, or redemption, but of enlightenment and self-knowledge. If this gospel had been accepted, the very structure of Christianity as an organized religion would have collapsed. The church would lose its power because people would understand that they don't need intermediaries to connect with the divine. This is why it was eliminated, forgotten, and labeled as heresy. But the question it leaves us with is inevitable. What other truths have been hidden from us? What these forbidden books show us is that the history we know is not complete. Decisions have been made about what we should believe and what we should ignore. We have been taught one version of the truth, but in the shadows exist accounts that offer us another perspective, one that could change everything. And the final revelation is still to come. In the last part, we will learn about the most unsettling forbidden book of all, one that not only challenges our worldview, but also makes us question the true nature of reality. If the books we have explored so far have been disturbing, the last one is undoubtedly the most unsettling of all. Not only was it forbidden, but its content challenges the very fabric of reality and the nature of the universe as we know it. This is the book of the secret revelations of John, also known as the apocryphon of John. This Gnostic text, attributed to the Apostle John, offers a completely different view of the creation of the world, a view so dangerous that it was condemned as heresy and erased from official history. According to this book, the God of the Old Testament, the one who commands wars, destroys cities, and demands absolute obedience, is not the true God. Instead, he is an impostor being, a corrupt archon known as the demiurge, a lesser entity that believes itself to be all-powerful, but in reality is only a shadow of the supreme divinity. The text describes how the true God, a pure source of light and knowledge, existed before all creation. From that source emerged Sophia, the wisdom, a divine feminine aspect that made a mistake. She created an entity without the permission of the supreme source. That entity was the demiurge, an arrogant and blind being that did not recognize the existence of a higher God. Filled with pride, the demiurge created the material world, an imperfect universe where suffering, death, and ignorance reign supreme. According to the apocryphon of John, the demiurge is responsible for our earthly prison, and he demands worship as if he were the only God. However, the most unsettling revelation in this book is that humanity carries within itself a spark of true divinity. We are not mere creations of the demiurge, but fragments of a higher reality trapped in an illusory world. This idea is so revolutionary that, had it been accepted, it would have destroyed the entire structure of traditional Christianity. Because if the God of the Old Testament is not the supreme God, then all of human history has been manipulated. But there is something even more terrifying. This book suggests that the forces governing our world do not want us to discover the truth. We are kept trapped in the cycle of birth, suffering, and death, controlled by a web of lies carefully designed to prevent us from remembering who we truly are. According to the apocryphon of John, Jesus came into the world not to die for the sins of humanity, but to deliver this forbidden knowledge. He was not the son of the demiurge, but a messenger of the true God who came to awaken us from the illusion in which we live. It is for this reason that his message was distorted. His teachings were transformed into a doctrine of obedience and fear, and his deepest words were erased from history. But if all of this is true, it leads us to the most terrifying question of all: who really controls this world? We live in a prison without walls, designed to keep us in the dark. Perhaps the reason why these books were banned was not that they were false, but because they were too dangerous, as they contained truths that could change our understanding of life, God, and the universe itself. And now that these revelations have come to light, the final question is for you. Will you dare to question the history that has been told to you? Thank you for watching.